Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Nesta and Feyre's mental journey into the Hybern camp brings back an unwanted visitor who steals their sister from their camp in the middle of the night. Donning a makeshift disguise as Ianthe, Feyre and Azriel hastily infiltrate Hybern's camp in an effort to rescue Elain from the king's clutches. The trio barely escape with their lives, and only with the helping hand of one or two former enemies.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of the book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we are exploring Sarah J. Maas's most ambitious novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This week, we're discussing chapters 63 through 65 in A Court of Wings and Ruin. This week, we ask ourselves, how are the characters working through their guilt, and how are they using it to their strength?
The theme we'll see in this section is resolution.
We're starting this episode with Chapter 63. Nesta has scryed to find the location of the Hybern camp. Feyre had to help get her out of the scrying / mental grip of the cauldron. Varian made out with Amren in front of everyone, and now, yeah, that's where we're at.
Varian and Amren making out, so much so that she starts purring like a cat. And my mind goes to dirty places as to what that purring could do. But it's just a great connection that Amren is different. She's wild. She is not one of them. Plus the fact that Varian directs them while Amren is wrapped around him and they're just making out and he's able to walk out of the tent, not bumping into anything. It's hot.
It is everyone's fantasy. I mean, it's mine.
My fantasy of not bumping into furniture is absolutely my fantasy.
And getting picked up and escorted out.
Look, just not hitting a wall on my way out. I don't even need a man for that one. Just doing it alone is my fantasy.
That's a success. Cassian asks Nesta, eat or bed? Feyre thinks about telling Cassian an invitation to his bed is not a good idea. She's assuming Cassian means sex when he says bed, because Feyre associates sex with power, and maybe Feyre thinks somehow Cassian is offering Nesta some strength and power by offering sex, but quite frankly, why does her mind even go there?
You know what? I respect Feyre for this. She's being a good wing sister, because in her mind, she's like, hey man, you should definitely fuck my sister. I support this entirely, but I think you're not in optimal condition to provide full services for my sister. She's looking out for Nesta. But what do I always say, Amy? That's right. Everyone together now. They can still sit on your face.
Yes, they can.
That is something I do keep saying.
She does. Jac constantly says that to
me. It's
like,
I don't get why this character won't do this. You can just sit on their face. It's fine.
Nesta probably should have taken Cassian up on his offer, or at least the food offer, if not the bed offer.
Oh, yeah.
But she opts for bed in the sleeping kind of way, and it's very clear to everybody that's what she means.
This is very telling because, as we talked about, food is power, and Nesta is obviously very powerless, and she's giving up that power as well by just choosing bed. Especially how in the next sentence, the very next line, it's Feyre and Rhys eating and talking about what they've seen. So you have a knowledge is power moment where they're exchanging knowledge, and then a food is power. And Feyre is about to become super powerful because she's willing to risk it all to go save Elain. Nesta, on the other hand, feels very weak.
Feyre, after eating dinner with Rhys, falls asleep, and in keeping with all other ACOTAR books in the series, the dreams mean something. Feyre starts in a tangled garden, thorns snagging on her. I wonder if Feyre could be in Elain's mind already by this point of the dream. The gate to Elain's mind was covered in vines and thorns, and Feyre is getting tangled in them. We then see the Suriel bleeding out and smiling. Kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't understand why it's there. We'll come back to that. Obviously, also, I'm going off on my theories. Jac will present her own in a moment. The Weaver eats Ianthe. We've spoken before about the Weaver and Feyre being connected. I think this foreshadows Feyre becoming Ianthe soon, using Ianthe's visage to infiltrate Hybern. And then Feyre dreams of Lord Grayson, quote, standing at the edge of the camp, beckoning to Elain, telling her he'd come for her to come home with him, that he'd found a way to undo what had been done to her, to make her human again. Can I say we told you so? Not that anyone was arguing against us, but this just confirms what we've been saying, that Elain has been rejecting her Fayness, and now the Cauldron is using that against her to seduce her. And it's fucking brilliant.
It's so brilliant because Elain is so dumb of like, hello, human ex-fiance who suddenly knows the power on making me human again.
It's not her most brilliant moment.
It's wishful thinking.
It is wishful thinking.
Now for me to bring in my interpretation. Great interpretation, Amy, and I think this is just shows when you're able to interpret a scene in different ways, that's a sign of good writing.
Yep.
Just want to point that out. Doesn't mean every single scene has to be like that,
No.
but just moments like that. I want to spend some time here because I think there's a lot of clever things that's happening from SJM. It starts off with, quote, my dreams were a tangled garden, thorns snagging on me as I stumbled through them. My mind goes straight to book 1, Thorns and Roses, and it's meant to make the reader go back to that book as well. If we remember, in Thorns and Roses, Feyre is also miserable, and she's away from the people that she loves, and she doesn't want to be there with Tamlin and everyone. But then a monster pretends to be her dad. That's when Feyre looks out the window and she sees her father beckoning to her, and she immediately thinks, oh my God, he's here to rescue me. My father, who can't quite walk, hasn't been able to do a damn thing a day in his life, has somehow trekked all the way out here to save me. And she believes it, and she goes with him. It's the same way that Elain believes that she's seeing Grayson and goes with him. I also want to point out, who's the one who saved Feyre from that monster? Tamlin. Who's the one who saves Elain from this? Azriel.
No comment.
Okay. But it's a fun connection, right? Between
it is.
Like the book 1, book 2.
It's an excellent connection.
Thank you. Additionally, I think the Cauldron sent out a message to Feyre and Elain, but Elain's the one who took the bait. For Feyre, it was the image of the Suriel who needed help, and then the image of Ianthe who's about to die. The Cauldron is there to take from Nesta. Remember, that is the point of the Cauldron taking Elain, because Nesta took something from it. For me, this shows that Nesta does care for Feyre just as much, because otherwise the Cauldron wouldn't have tried to lure Feyre out. But unlike Elain, Feyre doesn't play those tricks anymore.
Great points, and I think they're going to just be supported further as we go along in our episode.
Woo!
But like a petty bitch... Though Feyre was not tempted by the Cauldron shows itself to Feyre anyway, saying, haha, I was here, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye, bitch.
Bye. I took what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly. When Feyre wakes up, the inner circle begin to gather because, like Feyre, Nesta and Amren have detected the Cauldron. The women remade outside of the Cauldron, specifically Amren and Feyre, can feel the Cauldron, whereas Nesta can hear it. Amren describes the Cauldron as slithering around like a snake, that good old temptress image coming back again. I choose to associate the slithering snake with temptation rather than evil, because where else has the snake been used? With Ianthe, always trying to tempt men with her power. The Cauldron has done the same in its own way, tempting Elain.
I do want to give Rhys a shout out here. When Feyre said that there was something wrong and that she had a dream of the Cauldron, he doesn't question it. She just has to say, Rhys, and then he's immediately up. And she says, like, oh, I had a dream. And his reaction is spot on.
Yeah, he's like, okay, damn it, shit.
Yeah, okay, we're good. Let me put on my pants.
Yeah, he doesn't even be like, oh, it was just a dream, go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm. And he doesn't even put on a shirt. That contributes nothing to this conversation, but it provides a lovely visual. There's something about, like, a guy who's so there for you.
He doesn't even put on a shirt?
Yeah. Because I've had the opposite experience where it's like, I need you to do this. Okay. You're putting on a fucking shirt? What the hell? If I'm willing to run around braless here, you can run without your shirt and glisten for me, bitch.
Wow.
I have a lot of aggression. I just finished a bully romance today, so...
That explains it.
Yeah.
Feyre does eventually hear the cauldron like Nesta. Quote, "It was a song and invitation, a cluster of notes sung by a voice that was male and female, young and old, haunting and alluring." This reminds me of so many things, but I'll settle with the Book of Breathings and the Weaver. Both were described with contradictions, just like the cauldron, and these contradictions honestly make the cauldron seem ephemeral and difficult for us mere mortals to comprehend. Notice how every single member of the inner circle shows up except Elain, and no one really notices and no one really thinks about this. Now, I want to say they're all stupid, but let's think about this realistically. Elain has never left her tent since encountering Grayson, and at every war camp she just gets put down and she goes into her tent. She doesn't leave until the tent is packed up.
Some would call that sulking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she could just be sulking right now. And naturally, folks would assume Elain won't come out despite what's going on. However, because this is also very annoying to me, I am going to argue against this point. Elain was remade just like Nesta. Nesta could hear the cauldron before anyone else, so we can assume the same for Elain. Why wouldn't Elain have come out with Nesta? Why wouldn't Feyre and Nesta, especially Nesta, have thought of Elain?
Can there be the opposite of the boy who cried wolf? Rather than someone calling and panicking every single time and that no one trusts them, it's the exact opposite. Elain hasn't even spoken to anyone or cared about anything so many times that they just forget that, like, of course it would make sense she doesn't come out of her tent. She didn't even come out. There were 2 freaking battles happening around. And she managed to stay inside the whole time?
Yeah, but you would think her trauma with the cauldron would evoke something from her.
There were men screaming and dying. Her friends were out there. Her sister, Nesta, freaking out for Cassian.
I don't know.
I'm the 4th petty sister. Let the cauldron have her.
That is something someone in your family would say.
Look, we tried and they weren't willing to participate, so you made this.
You made your bed, now lie in it.
Yeah, I was about to be like, you made your bed and then you buried it and then now you have your hatchet. I'm combining a lot of things into one.
Yeah, you are.
But you get it. Elain deserves it.
You made your bed, now eat your cake. And
then bury the hatchet too.
And dig your hole.
Yeah, dig your hole, damn it, with your cake that you buried in bed. That's how much that Elain did this to herself.
Instead of Feyre or Nesta thinking of Elain, it's Azriel. Azriel, who sees the 3 remade women in front of him that sense the cauldron and wonders where the 4th remade woman is. And this is why people love Azriel and Elain, because he's always thinking about her. Yay. Doesn't mean it's right.
I know. I mean, look, I get it. This is like the beginnings of it. Where it really starts to get steamy. And I get it. And I start changing my tune a little bit at the end of this.
Yeah. I've complained this season about Feyre being a bad sister, and maybe that's what's happened here. Feyre's forgotten about Elain again. But at the same time, what I find significant here is that both Feyre and Nesta have momentarily forgotten Elain. And what I think that is showing is a necessary separation from Elain for future difficulties between Elain and Nesta to be realized, especially in Silver Flames. Why is this happening? It's because Nesta, unlike Elain, has accepted her feyness, and that's what's really causing the rift between them.
Yeah. I mean, accepting her feyness is much more than Elain. There's still more to accept come Silver Flames, but there might be someone who's like, she doesn't accept it completely. And it's like, yeah, she doesn't accept it completely, but she's like understood there's a new lot in life for her.
Yeah, here's how I see it with Nesta. She's on the road to full acceptance. Yeah. And then her dad dies.
Oh, yeah.
And then she completely regresses and she rejects it.
Yes.
And she has to start all over.
Okay, I agree. I agree with that.
But right now,
she's accepting.
She's very accepting.
I concur with you. Now, I'm annoyed with Elain, in case you couldn't tell. And that should have been the theme of this episode. Jac's pissy. Oh, shocker. I'm annoyed with Elain because Nesta and Feyre are finding peace with one another. Nesta is finding purpose away from being Elain's older sister, and Elain just couldn't keep her shit together long enough and puts them all at risk.
Someone's got to ruin something. Always.
It's going to be her. And I'm not hating on Elain. I just want people to know that. I think I'm not. I'm questioning myself now.
I'm questioning you. I want to talk more about the idea of the separation between Elain and Nesta in the next chapter. For now, let's not forget that the last image of the chapter is Elain's cloak, still warm from her body. So this reminds me of the surreal, and I don't know if that came across anyone else's mind. It feels like it should mean something that it was a cloak specifically that got left behind, especially when Feyre just saw the surreal in her dream. But I can't quite figure out the significance.
There's a lot of foreshadowing. I'm going to eventually speculate saying that this section is going to foreshadow Elain's future book. Hear me out. This just popped into my head.
Got it.
It's very clear to me that there's a lot of connections with the serial. Otherwise, SJM wouldn't have referenced the serial in her dream. And with the cloak warm and everything, right? Mm-hmm. There's an intentional serial connection. Who is Feyre about to dress up as?
Ianthe.
Who killed the serial?
Ianthe.
So in future books, what will Feyre do to hurt Elain?
I don't know.
It's just very interesting that you have the two sisters that are representing who have always been very parallel. Mm-hmm. And one is now about to take on the physical form that helps kill the other. And I'm not saying that Feyre actually kills Elain. I think it could be more metaphorical than that. Like, she kills her hope, or she, kills the desire to be with Azriel.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too.
Mm-hmm. Like, maybe she's the one who's like, hey, better check yourself before you wreck yourself type situation. But I think that we're about to get into it more, and I have a lot more theories as to what these chapters mean in future Elain.
Interesting. Yeah, I would love to see that play out. Another thought that just popped into my head is the cauldron tried to bait Feyre with images of the surreal, and she didn't fall for it. And so to mock Feyre, the cauldron leaves Elain's cloak.
Yeah, like the serial. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like your idea better, though.
Thank you.
It's the start of chapter 64. Elain has been taken, and Nesta is sitting, quote, with her head in her hands inside Feyre's tent, coiled in on herself, clinging to stay whole. That's how she looked. To me, this is important for a multitude of reasons. Elain is as good as gone in Nesta's mind. Nesta, who so far has accepted her fateness, and in the process forgot about her favorite sister, who she always protects. Nesta is shutting down right now because she's without hope of having lost that connection. Now, although we as readers know Elain is rescued, and we'll talk about that reunion at the end of the episode, let's think about this moment in the context of what happens in Silver Flames after Papa Archeron is killed. Papa Archeron is truly the last symbol of each Archeron's sisters linked to humanity. If this is how Nesta is acting mere moments after Elain's kidnapping, Elain being Nesta's most immediate tie to the human world right now, then the way Nesta acts in Silver Flames begins to make more sense, even if Nesta doesn't like her father all that much.
I want to get into that question of guilt that we kind of referenced at the beginning. Not kind of, we straight up referenced it. In regards to Nesta and at this very moment, Nesta is hunched over, clinging to her head, and we're going to hear her be kind of short with other characters in a moment, because right now she feels like everything is absolutely hopeless. Elain is going to die in Nesta's mind. Nesta, to me, is obviously feeling a lot of guilt for bringing in the cauldron and for forgetting about Elain while they're trying to figure things out and what's going on. The reason why I'm saying she feels the guilt, one, I think it's normal for everyone to feel guilty. But two, she's not blaming others. And I feel like that's something Nesta would have easily done in other moments of saying like, well, Feyre is the one who made me go in to look for the cauldron. And Rhys is the one who made Feyre do it. And it's all your guys' fault for not checking in on her. She's not doing anything. Yeah, she's short with others, but she's internalizing a whole hell of a lot. And it's also reminding me of when the wall came down and Nesta couldn't do anything. Like, she was prepping and then the wall comes down and it was like, oh, all this power for nothing? I'm sure that's the same thing. Like, all this power for nothing? I couldn't save my sister? That's the second time in this book that that's happened. Nesta probably thinks that she's failed everyone, and we're just really setting her up to have a major complex that we end up seeing in Silver Flames.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Not only has she failed everyone, I think the most important thing is she's failed both of her sisters.
Both times.
Both times. And yeah, that's a huge element to her complex in Silver Flames.
Yeah.
Love it. Not really. I don't love it for her, but I love that you
love
brought
the
it up.
complexity, the tension.
Cassian says that they'll get Elain back, and Nesta makes it very clear he will do nothing about it because, he's wounded. Azriel, however, steps up, making it clear he will get Elain back. Note what happens after Azriel says this. Quote, Nesta slid her gaze to the Shadow Singer. Azriel's hazel eyes glowed golden in the shadows. In the shadows. There is an absence of light here, mind you, and yet despite that, Azriel's eyes glow golden, like what we associate with Elain and with mating bonds. And so don't forget this. It'll come up again.
Or maybe it's meant to show an otherworldliness, the way that Amren's eyes glow silver. Or maybe it's meant to link Azriel to Tamlin, which I'm about to do over and over again.
Which I continue to find infuriating.
Look, it could also mean that Azriel is a huge Harry Styles fan.
True.
I mean, who of us doesn't love a good Harry Styles?
Love Harry Styles. It's golden. Feyre sets about assembling her Ianthe disguise, determined to infiltrate the Hybern camp with Azriel, masquerading as the dead high priestess. Now, when I read this for prep, I had to ask myself, by dressing as Ianthe, does Feyre become Ianthe or does she mock Ianthe? If we think about Feyre's time at the Spring Court earlier in Wings and Ruin, Jac talked about Feyre stooping to Ianthe's level, pretty much reaching Feyre's lowest point ever. But this is different. Feyre is intentionally becoming Ianthe, but she's not actually acting like Ianthe anymore. Though Feyre takes on Ianthe's face, the siphon isn't quite the right color and the robe's not quite the right cut. It is a visual mockery of Ianthe, and not necessarily in a way that it's a bad disguise, but a symbolic representation to readers that Feyre's no longer the woman she was in the Spring Court who, though she opposed Ianthe, was morally problematic.
I love Feyre dressing up as Ianthe because there's so many ways to interpret things, and even Rhys points out that it's fitting because Ianthe's the one who sold out her sisters. So, when the characters are pointing out how fitting it is, then it just makes it more fun. And to Amy's point, there's meaning with her stepping away from Ianthe's mask and taking on her name. But I'd like to introduce another element. Remember back to season 2 when we were talking about the many issues with Tamlin and Feyre and all the shit that they were going through. And there were many, many issues that were specifically Tamlin's fault. Like, I will not ever walk away from that. But if we remember season 2, I pointed out that Ianthe definitely made it harder for them, and she wanted to insert herself in their relationship and get Feyre out. In many ways, Ianthe won, and in many ways she didn't because she's dead. But the point is that Ianthe did play a part in Feyre and Tamlin's demise, and it's fitting for Feyre to use her face to release the mask and for Tamlin to help Feyre. Like, he probably wished he did back at the beginning.
This is just the beginning of us talking about a Tamlin redemption arc. And not everybody thinks he deserves it. I don't know that he deserves it. But what we're going to see here, especially with Jac's idea of Feyre being Ianthe and Tamlin being able to do what he did not do in book 2, we're going to start to see signs of him working towards redemption.
We keep saying this all the time, but just in case someone forgets, redemption doesn't mean a happy ending.
No.
Redemption doesn't mean a love story.
No. Doesn't mean life.
Doesn't mean life. So, a redemption arc can end extremely tragically.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean what he did in the past is forgiven and forgotten. It just means he's grown and knows that he did wrong and has paid his dues for that.
And the reason why Amy and I would love to read that is because as writers, that's a hard mission.
Yeah.
Like, you just spent so many books villainizing him because he is a villain.
Yeah.
And now you want us to root for him?
Yeah.
That is the type of talent that I aspire to, and I think SJM is totally capable of.
I agree. Rhys gives Feyre a pep talk before she and Azriel leave, but honestly, it's more like a battle chant or a prayer in some ways to me. Here are some things that stuck out. Quote, "They took what is ours, and we do not allow those crimes to go unpunished." We've seen Rhys refer to Elain as property before, and this feels pretty consistent with that. Elain is a tool, a bargaining chip to keep people like Lucien and maybe even Nesta and Azriel in line.
I called this out in my notes too, and I will continue to use these moments to show people the Rhys that we see in Silver Flames is the same Rhys that we see now. The reason why he seems so evil in Silver Flames is because it's coming from Nesta's point of view. And she's able to hear moments like these and say, hey man, that's fucked up. Elain is not a what?
Yeah.
Elain is a person. But, you know, like, she's not in the room, obviously, but this is just a moment that I think SJM puts in here, and to remind the readers, like, he's not who you necessarily think he is. He still has these manipulative aspects about him.
Rhys goes on to say to Feyre, quote, "You do not fear, you do not falter, you do not yield. You go in, you get her, and you come out again." Now, Feyre isn't going to obey this to the letter, and I want to come back to this thought later in the episode, so put a pin in it. Rhys also says, quote, "Remember that you are a wolf and you cannot be caged." Feyre has told herself this very same thing when she went to the Weaver's cottage. She's also summoned water wolves in Velaris, and the Weaver called Feyre a wolf not too long ago. So it feels significant here.
He's also reminding Feyre that she can get out. 2 of Feyre's worst moments and worst memories is when she was trapped under the mountain and then trapped in Tamlin's Manor. She is free. She can get out. He is reminding her that.
Lastly, Rhys and Azriel address each other formally with titles. Quote, "You get them in and out again, Shadow Singer." "I swear it, High Lord." These almost feel like sacred vows. They're no longer friends in this situation. And I wonder, on some morbid level, what would happen to Azriel if he failed and broke this vow? Would it cost him his life? When Azriel winnows with Feyre to the Hybern camp, Feyre notices that the sensation's different. Unlike Rhys, a shooting star, Azriel is colder, sharper, cutting through the world like a blade. He is truth teller incarnate, perhaps.
I love that. Then Azriel becomes Feyre's shadow, because he kind of mimics her, like he follows in her shadow the whole time. And it's probably just a cool visual. I'm sure if I were to think about it, there could be some cool metaphors or representation of what that means, but I'm not here to do that. I am here to do that, literally. That's this podcast.
It does make me think of Peter Pan.
That's fun. I don't know. But there's a lot of fairy tale elements in this whole section, so I can kind of see that.
I'm sure there's a lot of meaning behind Peter Pan's shadow and why it's separate from him.
Probably his conscience or something, because he's shady too.
He's so shady. And the fact that he doesn't grow old and...
Look, Peter Pan syndrome in men is real.
It's so real.
It's...
To what extent is that Azriel?
Oh, all the extents.
Do you want to describe what Peter Pan syndrome is?
Peter Pan syndrome is a guy that's just not willing to grow up. So they kind of seem a little childish. They don't really change much. There's not a lot of movement happening. They just are in denial of growing up and doing the grown-up things.
We need to cut this out. You know who that reminds me of?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the perpetual bastard. It's the perpetual bachelor.
You know, I'm not saying that men who have Peter Pan syndrome shouldn't have it. Like, go live your life, do your thing.
Yeah. But with it comes a certain rejection of adult-like responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, and with that comes the rejection of other people's relationship dynamics.
And I wouldn't say social norms, but certain societal expectations.
Societal expectations. I mean, it's the same. Coming back to Azriel, I think it makes sense because the big thing with Peter Pan syndrome is that they don't handle change very well at all. And talk about a man who doesn't like change.
Yeah, exactly. And who's been stuck on the same woman for 500 years.
Isn't willing to have a grown-up conversation about it.
Right. His tendencies, and granted, obviously because of his trauma, he feels like a boy that's been trapped in a dark room for years.
And that's exactly what he is. He was absolutely trapped there. Interesting with the Moira connection, because Peter Pan is all about his shadow, and that is Azriel.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Wonder what that means for Azriel in the future.
SJM.
Who's his Wendy? Is it Elain?
Well, it would make sense because he doesn't end up with Wendy. And Wendy is this innocent, pure, kind of naive, but also like, you can kiss me now.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, all right, I'm, done here. I'm going to go live my life and grow up.
Yep.
Wow.
Look at that.
I hope everyone else is having this same moment as us.
Moving on. Feyre approaches the heart of the Hybern camp at the start of chapter 65. She doesn't know if anyone at the camp knows about Ianthe's demise. So, to test it out, she approaches, jangling her silver bracelets on her wrist, quote, like a cat with a bell on its collar. And I love that we see the idea of the collar come back. Tamlin's mask in Thorns and Roses was a collar that he wore put there by Amarantha. Ianthe, in this case, is not much different for Hybern. What I also love about this scene is that Feyre has been hating on Ianthe so long, obsessing over Ianthe and her antics that, of course, Feyre could put on a good show and a very, very good Ianthe impersonation.
Feyre is more ready to take on being Ianthe than she would have been in Mist and Fury. Like, not that that was an opportunity, but I'll get into explaining why that is. Ianthe uses her sexuality, or used, rest in not peace, Ianthe.
Rest in perpetual doom.
May your pillow never cool. May you run into every red light in the afterlife.
May your food always taste like ash.
Or not ash, but just like not quite right.
A little like it's 8 days old and you might get food poisoning from it.
I'm like, what's more torturous? Oh, no, I got it. May the food you eat never be the food you crave. Yeah.
That is evil.
That is pure evil. Anyway, Ianthe uses her sexuality as a weapon, something that Feyre used to balk at back in the day. Since then, Feyre has gone on to become the sex queen every time she goes to the Court of Nightmares. She sees how sex can be used as power and how Ianthe used it. So rather than shying away from it or even condemning it necessarily, Feyre embraces it. Plus, I love how Feyre downgrades Ianthe. In Mist and Fury, she called Ianthe a wolf. And now Feyre is the wolf and Ianthe is a cat who preens, is coy, and yet predatory and sensual. Which is fair. Cats are the sexier of the house pets, some would say. But do they have a sex position named after them? No.
No, but you know what?
They got a different type of kitty.
Remember how Feyre calls this the heart of the Hybern army? Well, SJM makes more anatomical references that make this imagery really spectacular, but also, at the same time, make Hybern's army seem like a living beast as well. As Feyre walks through the camp, it is described as, quote, a broad artery lined by tents and forges. The king's tent is bone-colored and, quote, rises like a gargantuan, spiny beast.
What I love about it is how it reminds me of Feyre's human heart, which is about to really come into play when we get to this new character soon.
Speaking of human hearts, for a moment, Feyre's fooled into humanizing the Hybern camp. She marvels at the fact that the army needs to eat and sleep as much as she and her friends in the Night Court army. What Feyre finds, however, is that that's not true. Instead of sleeping, they are all celebrating into the wee hours of the morning while they torture children of the blessed.
It both humanizes them and then demonizes them because Feyre can relate to the need of rest. But once she sees what they're doing and what they're up to, Feyre then makes the connection of being like, at least the Court of Nightmares isn't as bad as them. And it's like, at least the Court of Nightmares is just really horny, dresses without much clothing, and grinds up on each other all the time.
To Jac's point, the Hybern army is happily torturing humans. The Court of Nightmares can't even get close to that.
They only like to torture their children.
With arranged marriage.
With arranged marriages and then other brutalities.
Yeah.
Still not great.
Not great, but at least they're not killing humans, I guess.
Woohoo!
So the children of the blessed have been tortured and injured the same way Claire Better was tortured by Amarantha in Thorns and Roses. I'm sure you remember Claire is always a trigger for Feyre. She has been in every novel. And this is where Feyre starts to deviate from Rhys said earlier, to get in, get Elain, and get out. But that's not what Rhys actually said. He said get her, a very, very vague her, though we know he meant Elain. And so this child of the blessed, Briar is her name, becomes a trigger for Feyre, and Feyre fixates on saving Briar along with Elain. In some ways, Briar becomes a stand-in for Claire. Because what is Claire other than Feyre's tie to her now deceased human life, the thing that keeps her heart human? In some ways, this makes Elain and Briar the same. Elain is Nesta's tie to her human past, and Claire and Briar are Feyre's tie to her human past. Feyre thinks this as she contemplates leaving Briar, as Rhys had instructed her to do. Quote, "Could I live with it? I'd once killed 2 innocents to save Tamlin and his people. I'd be as good as killing her if I left her there in favor of saving my sister." Now, we know that Feyre doesn't have a problem with killing unless it's someone she perceives as innocent as the fairies under the mountain from Thorns and Roses. So, by choosing to save both Elain and Briar, both representing ties to humanity, does Feyre become redeemed in some way for the 2 innocents she killed while she was human? Does Feyre regain some of her humanity in the process?
I hope not, because I worry if I would have lost my humanity, if I'd be like, that is so sad.
Bye!
I'll pray for you. Okay? Or like my messed up mind would be like, all right, look, I'm going to kill you, put you out of your misery.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do, honestly.
Right? Like my mind wouldn't have gone to saving necessarily.
Yeah, because then she has to live with that trauma the rest of her life.
Yeah, and then, I mean, and also like, it's like a whole other person, like having to go from tent to tent, and
yeah,
it's like a whole thing. Look, Feyre obviously did the right thing. We're not right.
No, I'm a queer villain icon.
According to, our TikTok.
And according to TikTok live audiences.
It's true, though. I am just a villain of like, I would feel so bad. So bad.
It's something I can live with, though.
But I go to therapy and I get the tools to survive. And I find a way to cope. Now, back to Briar. When you're like, Briar's her name, in my mind, I was like, Briar's her name, symbolism's her game.
It's true.
So how much of Briar being there is supposed to help represent Elain's new strength, too? Elain can see how weak Briar is, and yet Elain is the stronger one because she's Fae and she's relatively unharmed, which is why I'm going to be pissed off later when the fact that Elain can't quite walk, or Elain doesn't walk, and I know her feet are bound, but you and I will get into that conversation. I practiced it.
Okay.
We'll get into it. I'm really going to get caught up into the meaning of Briar here. When SJM gives us a name, it means something. So Briar itself means prickly thorn bush, which is why we normally get the name Briar Rose. If that sounds familiar to you, that's because it's Sleeping Beauty's name. So my mind immediately goes to Sleeping Beauty and how a woman is captured by an evil fairy and forced to sleep for 100 years after pricking her finger. There are so many variations of this tale, but what's important to know is that it's a tragic story. In some versions, Briar Rose is full-on raped and has children in her sleep. In others, she wakes up and everyone she knows and loves is dead. I think, for me, this is a clue as to what Elain's story is going to be in future books. Just like Feyre, her first book was Beauty and the Beast, and then Persephone and Hades, I think Elain in some shape, form, or another is going to be Sleeping Beauty.
And to further your point, Sleeping Beauty's name, in addition to being Briar Rose, is also Aurora. And Aurora is light. And Elain's name means light.
Yep.
So they seem very interconnected.
And I don't think that that's going to mean that she's going to be asleep literally for 100 years. Some might say that she's asleep in denial. And finally, one day she kind of wakes up and is like, I need to get my shit together and go after Lucian. You're glaring. I only see one eyeball, and the disapproval and disgust that one eyeball is eyeing me.
It's just so hard because I know that it's there, but I haven't fallen in love with them yet. If we were recording this after we know the ending of the entire ACOTAR series and we fall in love with Lucian and Elain, then I'd be like, oh, it's so amazing.
But
until then, I'm going to go, What's important about Feyre's rescue of Briar, at least to me, is that it's showing Feyre has come a long way as High Lady. And part of that includes the fact that parts of her haven't changed. This need to save innocence despite the odds. And that makes her distinct from Rhys and his High Lord philosophies. Case in point, Jurian says to Feyre, quote, your sister or her, you won't be able to take 2 out. To which Feyre responds, quote, get her to me and I'll make it happen. What's fascinating is that though Jurian has seen very little of Feyre in his lifetime, he believes both her intent and her ability to save Briar enough that he risks himself to do as Feyre wishes. And that's not only ballsy, but I think speaks to Feyre's character.
Yeah, I mean, and it also speaks to Jurian's observation of her, because think about earlier in the book that everything Feyre was willing to risk when she went to go after Dagnan and Branna after they tortured those humans. Jurian knows Feyre has a soft spot for humans. He knows what she's willing to do, and he knows that they can't afford to lose Feyre. So whatever Feyre needs, Feyre gets.
Yep.
Also, how does Jurian realize who Feyre is? Is it just convenient? Well, I think there's a reason behind this. Even though Jurian is human, he's also made by the cauldron. And that means we don't know what special gift the cauldron has given him. Earlier, we were talking about how Nesta was made and she heard the cauldron.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that means Jurian always hears the cauldron.
Oh.
Because he's with it. Plus, obviously, I think it's safe to say Feyre is probably not as good at being Ianthe as she thinks she is. At least not to the people who really know Ianthe, but that wasn't the purpose. She just needed to get in, get out, and that's what she does.
Yep.
Jurian's parting words to Azriel are, "I hope you can carry 3, Shadow Singer." And I cackled at this because in my mind, I'm like, who are those 3? More Elain and Gwen. And Buddy's going to need some bigger wingspans to handle all that.
Or a bigger bed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wasn't imagining all at the same time. I was like literally thinking carrying them.
Oh.
But that too.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk. When Feyre and Azriel find Elain, Elain is entirely focused on Azriel, quote, devouring the sight of him as if not quite believing it. Unlike her dream of Grayson, which was actually the cauldron, Azriel is appearing to Elain as her savior, the knight in shining armor she wanted Grayson to be. Though Grayson was actually the cauldron the whole time, Elaine's desire for humanity and to reject her Fayness led to her downfall. So no wonder why Elain fixates on Azriel. Honestly, I think that if it had been Lucien here in this moment, Elain might have been more open to him in the future and more open to the idea of being his mate. But since it's Azriel who's doing the saving and what Grayson could not do, Elaine's going to fall in love with Azriel. It's just how it is.
Oh, yeah.
In some ways, I think Elain will begin to separate from her humanity because of these events, though not entirely, and because she wants to pursue Azriel from here on out. It's not a true separation from her humanity, and it's not a true acceptance of her Fayness, at least not in my mind. It's more like loving the idea of love. She's on the path to it, but she's really not there yet, and she's there for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, all of it is wrong. The fact that Elain looks at Azriel and says, "You came for me," it pisses me off so much because Feyre is there too.
To what extent did she have a vision of Azriel saying, "I'll go save Elain"?
I don't care. Feyre is there too. If I was the 4th archer on Sister and I showed up to save Elain and I was like, "Excuse me? Do you not see? I can walk right out. I can leave you. There's a human here that I can go save who will thank me." That's why I'm not a heroine in any book. It would go too many places. But when it comes to Elain and Azriel, it just screams trauma bond. And I get it. There's a reason why Elain starts to develop feelings for him. He saves her, and he loves to save women. Like, it is a good match. And I'm not saying that they're going to end up together. What I'm saying is that they're both pissing me off. So go
make babies.
Go for it. Whatever. Screw you guys. I think what annoys me so much as well is that Elain isn't freaking out. She's made to appear rather put together, almost tough even, because she's not trembling or crying. This strength, where the hell is this coming from? Like, we have not seen this in a really long time, and she's just been perpetually sulking, and suddenly now she's like, I can suck it up. And again, I get it, life or death situation, she's able to pull through in these moments, but it's just like, come on now.
We know she's always had an inner strength because Feyre's also talked about that before, making the best of worst situations. I understand your frustration because she's been a sulky baby.
Yeah, and now you want to, I mean, perfect timing to pull it together. Like,
right, this is the time you should pull it together.
But it's just like...
But you're annoyed.
I'm annoyed, yeah, because it's like, if you had this inner strength, you wouldn't have fallen for this fake Grayson. Like, you just went from falling for a fake Grayson to come, turn you back into a human to suddenly pretty strong and put together. There's a disconnect for me there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a writing thing, but I'm choosing to blame Elain. When maybe that's like an SJM thing that, for me, I don't see those two people being the same person in such a short amount of time.
I mean, it has been hours. No. But think about how much thinking you can do about just like, oh shit, I got myself into this situation. And she's desperate to stay alive, which we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Yeah.
Jac is just very disappointed. Her face is, now she's Elain sulking over in the corner.
I'm just like thinking Elain and I could not be friends right now. She'll have to come back to me when I'm ready.
And when Elaine's proven herself.
Yeah.
We get to the point where Feyre and Azriel are running through the camp with Elain to the border of the camp in order to flee through the wards past the Hybern camp boundaries. And you know what this is? A good old parallel to Thorns and Roses. Let me take you back. After searching for the Suriel in Thorns and Roses, and like we said, is Elain something like the Suriel perhaps? Feyre is pursued by the Naga. Now, in this moment, Feyre and company are pursued by Naga-like hounds, just like in Thorns and Roses. And just like in Thorns and Roses, Feyre uses arrows to take them down.
And who runs with Feyre during that time to help save her?
Tamlin.
And who's running with Elain now to help save her? And Azriel.
Yeah, Azriel, sorry.
Yeah. But like Tamlin too. Remember in the last episode when I said the Suriel had a message for each sister? And I think the stay with the High Lord was a parallel message for Elain. Well, the scene that this is reenacting is the same scene that Feyre got that original message.
Yeah.
So it just kind of doubles down that fits for Elain too.
Yeah. And it doubles down that Elain could be the Suriel because of the whole cloak and the whole situation. Anyway, we're just reinforcing our points. So that we're just so smart.
We're reinforcing so that you'll never disagree.
I'm jumping ahead a bit in the narrative because this is important. Why are we paralleling that particular scene? Remember in season 1, we talked about when Feyre and Tamlin fought the Naga, their affection for each other really began to become obvious, that they were really starting to fall in love with each other. Who shows up to help Feyre and company? Tamlin. After all this time, after all the secrets, Tamlin reveals his hand to the King of Hybern, destroying his disguise as a mole in order to save Feyre from the Naga hounds. And for the first time in a long time, I think Feyre really sees Tamlin for who he is here. Unlike in Thorns and Roses, Feyre's not falling in love with Tamlin. However, this whole violence is love thing that has been Feyre's bread and butter since day one is coming back around and I think is creating a turning point for both Feyre and Tamlin in their relationship.
This is when Feyre can start to find peace because this is a moment when she sees Tamlin actually caring for her. This is a true and unselfish moment.
And for us readers, how can we not be moved by it?
I'm sure there's one person out there that's like...
Oh, there's plenty of people who are like, fuck
easy.
you, Tamlin.
Yeah, easy. I'm not moved. But it is moving because it just reminds me of at the High Lords meeting when everyone discovered Feyre's powers and then they looked over at him and he still defended her. the reason why I'm calling that out, and it's like, I'm not being swayed. He's still an asshole. Don't worry. But it's like, he did care for her in his way.
To me, that moment at the High Lords meeting and this moment here, no matter what the future holds for the two of them, to me, it's a reminder that what they had before Amarantha was very genuine.
Yes.
And they both still very much value that or are capable of valuing that. They just have to get over the poison that's happened since.
And that's the hard thing with relationships that you've moved past. It is nice to be able to look like reminisce on the good times and just be like, those are really good times.
Yeah.
And then I have other exes that have been so tainted with a lot of other things that it was hard for a really long time to reflect on the good times when you just think about all the shit. Now, granted, domestic violence,
right.
Different situation.
Right.
But, we keep talking about how Tamlin doesn't know how to love someone.
Yeah.
Because he's too messed up. So in these moments, it's like, this is as close as he's ever reached to loving her truly.
Yeah. And expressing that love.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't excuse all the shit that he's pulled.
No, not at all.
It doesn't excuse domestic violence or abuse. But he cares, and it's hard to not be moved by that.
I also just want to point out that Feyre references Tamlin's golden coat. Who else is going to be coated in gold later? Azriel? Right? Because he's Elain's Tamlin. And I'm sure we're going to get a little bit more into that moment later, Amy.
Boo. But back to the pursuit. Can I just say the King of Hybern is fucking creepy? His voice is everywhere and nowhere, as if he is omnipresent. He strides toward Feyre, quote, unhurried and assured of our capture. His confidence plus the bland handsomeness, it's kind of like disgusting hot.
Yeah.
Which is very disturbing to me. And then he says, quote, how Rhysand shall rage, how he shall panic. His mate at last come to see me. Something about this almost makes it sound like Feyre and the King of Hybern are having an affair. And he has the swagger to back it up. His sex appeal and willingness to use sex as a weapon. Again, disturbing, creepy, problematically hot. I'm very concerned for my safety now.
What I also see in this moment, though, is, yes, the sex appeal, but I see it between Rhys and Hybern. And as Amy said during prep, she is bi, and from one bi villain to another.
He's hardcore bi.
Yeah. Oh, he is totally bi. And he wants Feyre and Rhys.
Oh, yeah. If we go back to episode 15, which hasn't aired yet, we talk about who Rhys would allow to have a threesome with, Feyre.
Oh, yeah. In another world, I think the three of them could have really gotten along.
In an alternate universe.
I really think we could have gone along with him too. Not at the same time, but like, just like I would love to hang out with him, minus the evil stuff.
Minus the like torture and disrespect of life.
And like, wanting to enslave the entire humans. All that aside, I think he'd be a really great guy to hang out with. He's just the ultimate bully romance.
Which Jac is into right now.
Look, it's really screwed up. I don't like bully romance, but I also can't stop reading it. I think the reason why I don't like them is that I feel like I could be a better manipulative bully. Like, not the bullier, but the because the bully starts to feel bad because they fall in love with them. I feel like I could drag on be like, you hurt me a lot longer.
Azriel takes off with Elain first, and as they approach Briar, Elain yells for the girl to grab on to Daddy Azzy. Remember how Elain was previously described?
Sorry, I'm just... Hold on to Daddy Azzy! Azriel's like, wait, what the hell? Hold on to Daddy Azzy if you want to live! Grab the daddy if you want to live! The daddy is coming! Grab the daddy!
Why did we take on odd accents?
I don't
know. Back to my point.
Yeah.
Remember how Elain, as Jac pointed out, was previously described before the pursuit as glancing between Azriel and Feyre, but she did not tremble, did not cringe? In Elain's place, the human girl, Briar, looks, quote, like a doe about to be run down by a wolf. And who's the wolf? Azriel or Elain? This, to me, is another indication of separation. Because of these events, Elain has made a separation from humanity. She's no longer the doe. That mantle has been taken on by a real human.
Going back to my Briar is Elain symbolism, Like Feyre, I think Elain is both the wolf and the doe. I don't think she's become full wolf just yet, but in my mind, Briar is Elain. She has all of the elements of Elain and the parts that will eventually die off, like Elain's humanity. What I love is Elain yelling, "Hold on if you want to live," to Daddy Azzy. But Elain is yelling that to Briar. Hold on if you want to live. But really, she's saying that to herself because she's discovered her will to live. And it's just like interesting because it's like, how much has Elain ever really held on to?
Yeah, like nothing.
Right now, Elain has chosen life. She's been sulking about Grayson and she's gotten on board pretty fast with this whole rescue plan and she wants to live. And so Elain was living her nice human life, but now it's time for her to woman up.
And she's willing to. I think that's the point of this whole sequence is that, yeah, she's been sulking. She's wanted to become human. That's why she falls for the Cauldron's ploy. But now she's like, oh, shit. Well, that's not going to happen. I don't care what it looks like. I'm going to live now. When the three collide, quote, Elaine's pale hands lurched, gripping the girl by her neck, holding her as tightly as she could. Then, when a hound lunges for them, quote, my sister sent a fierce kick into the beast's face. Its eye, another. It bellowed, and Elain slammed her bare muddy foot into its face again. The blow struck home. Like I said, Elaine's no longer a pacifist. We've mentioned before the hidden strength, and that's really shining through right now, and I think it's important to mark before the final battle because this is just showing Elaine's commitment to life. I think it's really going to play a part in how she acts from this point on through the rest of the series.
Question.
Yeah.
Azriel has one on each arm?
That's my thought.
Right?
Well, Elaine's arms are hooked around his neck, and he's carrying her because she can't run.
Okay.
So he's carrying her princess style, in my mind.
So how is she kicking?
Oh, is this a plot hole?
I think so, because, okay, so let's say he's holding her with both arms, and she's telling the other one to live. So maybe she's holding on to his legs, I guess? But I thought he held on to her. Briar.
I think she grabs onto his back.
Well, that doesn't make sense because he has wings and they go barreling into her.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining like maybe she has like...
But Elain reaches out with her hands. I wonder if she unhooked her hands from Azriel's neck.
Look, all I'm saying is if you have enough room to kick, you have enough room to walk.
Yeah, which is going to come up later.
Yep. And I just want to come back to all this. I think Briar is the extension of Elain, and Azriel is balancing between the two versions of Elain, this stronger Fae versus this human. And who does he end up forcing to walk versus Carrie?
The human.
He forces the human to walk versus Elain, the Fae. And I just think there's something about not being able to come to terms with the two that maybe he'll struggle with.
I think you make a great point. I mean, look at Moore. He is unable to coming to terms with anything about Moore, and Elain has allowed him to save her. So now he's going to have a complex. He's not going to be able to come to terms with any strength that she has.
And if you think about it, each partner, and I'm thinking Rhys and Cassian, I think have come to terms with their partner's humanity. Rhys very much so with Feyre's human heart. He tells her, don't lose it. And then with Nesta and her struggle to embrace fully the whole mate thing. And then, do we do a wedding? What's the ceremony? And Cassian's like, we'll do it all, baby. Like, whatever you want. What I find with Azriel is, from what we've seen, we don't know his point of view. This is all speculation. But he's the one who discovered her seer abilities. And he's the one who's like, why aren't we mates? He's focusing on all of the Fae aspects of her rather than the human aspects of her, which is still very much a part of her. Wow to myself. I'm just thinking like, wow, SJM, you got to give me this book.
Yeah, seriously. I cannot wait till December 2025. I made up a
Speculation. Everyone's freaking out right now. What do you know?
I know nothing.
No, but I just want her to listen to this season. Wait, did we say anything bad this season? No. But I want her to just be like, look, there's some great things. If you haven't written this book already, feel free to use us as a reference.
We have lots of ideas for you.
Tons.
And then it's Feyre's turn to fly. What does she see? Quote, for the first time since I had known him, there was terror in Azriel's eyes as he watched me make that run. And this goes back to my question. Would Az lose his life if Feyre died here? Is he thinking of that? Or as his pseudo-mother, Is Azriel genuinely afraid for Feyre's life right now?
Mommy.
I mean, he's the one who has seen her fail the most.
Oh, absolutely.
So his terror is
real.
legitimate.
Oh, it's real. I have no doubt that he's looking at her saying, and he's thinking like,
Fuck.
okay, at the end of the day, Azriel knows Feyre comes out alive. Even Rhys would be like, you let Elain die, you let everyone die, Feyre comes out alive.
Absolutely.
There is no other option.
Yeah.
She is the one you save. And right now he has the human, Briar, clinging on to him. I think he's fully prepared to like kick her off and go save Feyre.
Yep.
Do what he needs to do. And that would be, you and I were talking about this a lot in prep. Does he just drop the other one to go save her? And that is the right answer.
It is the right answer, and Feyre would hate him for it.
And he would not even bat an eye or feel bad about it.
No.
But that's like his job too. Yeah, I think he's genuinely afraid. And I think what's like, for me, that always kind of gives chills because he's never afraid. And he's the one who's calm, cool, and collected. And I'm just imagining his face right now and her being like,
terror.
This doesn't give me confidence.
Like, fuck you, Azriel.
Like, I'm about to throw myself off this cliff and I don't need you looking at me like that.
I need you to give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, you're doing great, sweetie. I mean, and he's like coaching her, wings up, legs up. And it's like, these aren't the encouraging things I needed to hear.
The tension, to your point, Jack, is great. And the buildup is great. Not only do we have Azriel's instructions, we also have Feyre with the countdown of the steps she has before the cliff's edge. And she's noticing the action around her and the way she's moving and the muscles that hurt. But here's my favorite tidbit. Quote, 20 steps. The sun broke over the eastern horizon, gilding Azriel's bloody armor with gold. On one hand, the sun is present, a visual representation of victory in battle. But just like when Azriel's eyes glowed gold earlier this episode, is it actually more than that? Especially as he holds Elain. And then this was my thought as I was taking my notes. Briar's also there? So what if Briar was his mate?
And I just wanted him to kick her off. Oops. I like that. I mean, I forgot that Briar lives.
Yeah.
I was like, doesn't Briar die? I love it. Like, let's throw any mate. Briar represents Elain, so why not? But as I mentioned before, I think that in this story, in this moment, has more to do with Tamlin and the connection to Tamlin. Right now, with the sun breaking over them, it's more like Tamlin's rebirth, especially when he leaps into the air towards the sun, towards them, away from Hybern. It's Tamlin finding solace.
And it's also Tamlin making the right choice, finally.
Jump off a cliff.
Well, but like Feyre is witnessing. He chose goodness, and he's really embracing that choice. No more games.
Talk about the most metaphorical, I'm leaving this. He has to go through a barrier that Feyre is the one who unlocked with her power of light and Helian's power. And he's the one who's like getting through this small opening, the small hole that she was able to go through. It's Feyre giving him permission to move forward because she's the one who literally opened that hole for them.
You know what it is? It's also a parallel to the end of Mist and Fury because Tamlin grabs her and winnows out after she breaks the wards in Hybern. Yeah. But they're not aligned at that moment. And it's here now. They don't look at each other. They winnow separately, but they're finally in the right place together.
Yeah, they're on the other side of the fence.
Yeah. As we've seen throughout the novel, Feyre struggles to fly. And right when she's at the peak of her highlighted career, when it comes to morality and decision-making, you want it to be enough. You want her to be successful. It's not quite enough, though. And maybe if she had more time, it could have been. But then, quote, a warm wind kissed with lilac and new grass blasted up from beneath me, a wind of spring lifting me, filling my wings. Did I ever tell you you're my hero?
I always think of that song too. Like Tamlin's the wind beneath her wings. I always think of that.
Beneath my wings.
That's so funny.
I had to do it because I
true.
think it every time.
Every time. So I get a little teary-eyed here. To me, it's the idea that you can have a history with someone and all the good that's been poisoned and all of it's been tarnished and you can never look back. And I kind of talked about that earlier, but it's the idea that Tamlin does this thing to like do good, to be good, that Feyre gets to heal too. But it comes from like such a true place. You know, so I get teary-eyed there where, I mean, this whole chapter gets me crying.
Yeah, it's so good. What I also love about this moment is that the wind kissed with, the smells of spring. These winds were all over the place in Thorns and Roses, and it's just a nice little callback to Tamlin and Feyre's time together, especially when things were good. And I think it's a nice little touch from SJM.
Yeah, I mean, she used the exact same lingo from book 1. It was amazing.
Yeah. Back at the night court camp, Azriel cradles Elain to his chest as he always does. Yes, in theory, she can't walk because her feet are supposed to be bound, but she kicked a knock. It's very confusing. But regardless, I'm not blaming Elain. I'm blaming Azriel because he's laying on the knight in shining armor act very thick. And I don't know that he actually gave her a choice to walk.
Her feet they can still be bound, and it doesn't make sense to run because they're heavy. She can still walk. And yes, I get it. It could be Azriel who's like, I will carry you. Briar was tortured.
Yeah.
Cut up. And we're making the poor tortured girl walk.
Yeah, it's kind of bullshit.
It's such bullshit. I know Azriel's the one who's holding on, but Elain is the one who's not letting go either.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'm going to mention this now because we get into sweeter moments later. But Elain goes up and reaches up and kisses Azriel, the Shadow Singer, on his cheek. And it just annoys me because it just solidifies their trauma bond. And it should have been Lucien. Lucien should have been the one to do that and save her. I think you already mentioned it. She would have viewed Lucien a whole lot differently.
She would have imprinted on Lucien if he was there.
Exactly. And it's just like she's going to imprint on the person who saves her. And Azriel has this complex of saving women. And Elaine's not even willing to walk for herself. And it's just like, at this point, you two deserve each other. Go have a happy life. Be miserable. I don't care. Whatever. I'm done. I'm done with you two. You don't deserve Lucien.
But also it's going to be so messy.
I love it. This is just doing the groundwork for such a high tension book.
Yeah. So much angst.
Yeah. When you go into this whole, then there has been a little chemistry leading up to this too, because how can you not with him?
Yeah.
They're such a slow burn.
Yeah, they are. They are. When Rhys finds Feyre and company as they re-enter the camp, the first thing Feyre says to Rhys is that she couldn't leave Briar. As if she has to explain her actions as High Lady when she decided to go against Rhys's instructions by saving the human. And I'm a little annoyed by that. I think he doesn't care. You came back alive.
Yeah, he doesn't care. I mean, I feel like I would have said something too. I couldn't have done it without. I had to do this.
Maybe it's easier to focus on that rather than how close to death they came.
I know this is not great, but it's if you found a puppy on the side of the road. I had to bring her home.
It's true. She was abandoned.
I had to save her. Shouldn't be equating women to animals.
No, we should not. So now here's the part of the novel that always makes me cry, even as I did prep, even as I wrote my notes.
Same. I read this, I think about it, I cry.
Yep.
I don't think I'm going to cry here, but I have hope you will.
Feyre reaches for Rhys as Nesta sprints towards them because Feyre assumes Nesta's going for Elain. Instead, though, Nesta hugs Feyre, both in gratitude for saving Elain, the sister Nesta feels she has to protect, and because in some ways, in my mind, Feyre and Nesta are closer right now than Nesta and Elain have been throughout this novel.
Yeah, definitely. When has Feyre ever been the first one someone reaches out to in their little family? Never. And Nesta reaches out to Feyre first. I think it's more than just gratitude. I'm pretty sure that Nesta thought that she was going to lose both of her baby sisters that night.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then Elain comes up and joins the hug. Quote, I don't remember when I began to cry as I felt those slender arms hold me tight as steel. Just a small Silver Flames spoiler, steel is associated with Nesta most of the time, but we get to see it associated with Elain here, and I think that's something to keep an eye on. Now back to this moment. The sisters are hugging each other.
Oh,
what?
I know a moment. I know what it means. The tight as steel. Earlier, when they went to Grayson's, she held on to Feyre's hand as tight as iron. She's stepping away from human self and going into Fey self. It's stronger than iron.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
That's a great point. Now going back to this moment, the sisters are hugging each other. Feyre, who as a human sacrificed everything for her sister so they could eat, never felt appreciated or loved. Now she's receiving the love she never got from her sisters. And remember, earlier in Wings and Ruin, when I think Feyre and Nesta were in the library, Feyre thought about the fact that she's never been hugged or kissed by Nesta. Mm-hmm. And here Nesta is crushing Feyre hard enough to take the breath from her.
It's so sweet.
Yes.
I'm going to just view it just slightly differently. Feyre is finally seeing the love she's receiving from both her sisters for the first time. I think she's more open to their love. The love has been there. They showed it in different ways, but I don't think Feyre was open to see that. And that makes it easier for the others to want to show their love because Feyre is finally open to it.
And what gets me every time is the final scene. The sisters lay down together, body to body, on the bearskin rug in harmony and healing. And it's the exact opposite of when they shared their mother's bed as humans. It's full circle in one of the most beautiful ways possible.
And then Rhys, walks out, gets everyone away. He knows not to get involved. This is truly a sister moment. And they just all have to go hug it out together. It's just so sweet.
It's so beautiful. And so, as we end our episode, I propose a love story. Where Thorns and Roses was the love story of Feyre and Tamlin. Mist and Fury was the love story of Feyre and Rhys. The love story of Wings and Ruin is both a story of Feyre learning to love herself, as well as opening up herself to the love of her sisters.
It just makes Silver Flame so hard.
Yeah. It really, this especially, this moment.
I was they're fixed. They're healed.
Yeah. And then to go to Silver Flames is so tragic.
Yeah. It hurts. It hurts. And I need this again. Yeah. I need SJM to get us back to this, where they're just sisters who love each other.
Yeah. And now we move on to Breadcrumbs.
We're getting less and less because
we're near the end.
We're at the end.
In chapter 65, Feyre, disguised as Ianthe when she finds Elain, but must distract the guards, prays to the cauldron. Quote, I kept up my litany of praying, beseeching the cauldron to make my womb fruitful. It's baby making time.
Yeah.
And also, I know this is probably just good old foreshadowing, but did the cauldron have a hand in Nyx's conception?
Definitely foreshadowing. It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, now that you're saying it, the cauldron's screw you, bitch. It's going to be horrible for you.
Yeah, seriously. Let me fuck it up for you.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Also in chapter 65, Feyre, as she takes off flying, thinks, quote, I knew that whatever force had compelled me to learn how to fly, somehow it had known that this moment was coming. All of it for this moment. Perhaps the mother?
Maybe.
One might think.
Mayhaps. So, Jac, how are the characters working through their guilt and how are they using it to their strength?
So the ones that stand out the most to me in this section, who have the most guilt and who all use it to their strength, are Tamlin, Feyre, and Nesta. Tamlin the most. I think he's the one who uses the most guilt strength forger. And he's the one who's saying nope, not again. I can't do this again. And then you have Feyre, who the guilt of Claire better and bringing on Briar and just the strength that she, you're talking about it, healing herself and her past, not mistakes, but past deeds.
Yeah.
And then you have Nesta, who's dealing with her own amount of guilt. And I don't know if she's using it to her. No, I will say she used it to her strength of being able to express her love for her sisters.
Yeah. Yeah, because she does not do that easily.
Mm-mm.
I know you're going to hate me for this. I'm going to add Elain to the pile. And here's why.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Try me.
I cannot imagine how Elain felt after getting captured and the amount of guilt knowing someone's going to come risk their life to save me.
I actually completely agree. Yeah.
And I think that's why we get the change from her, from this sulking, wants to be human again, to being oh shit, not only did I put myself in danger because I was so desperate to be human again, I'm putting people I love in danger because I know they're going to come save me.
Yep. I mean, and that's probably why when Azriel and Feyre show up, she's like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right, we're good. And all of it makes sense. It does.
Yeah. She's like, I'm not going to be the weakest link in this situation because I've created the situation.
I'm already the weak. I mean, even then, she's still the weakest link. So it's at least try to somewhat hold it together.
Yeah.
I'm some of the nails.
Be resistant.
I just think about some of the nails that hold up our soundproofing walls. Some of them are far weaker and on the verge of falling off.
It's true.
And others are pretty sturdy. But you know what? They're all holding on.
They are all holding on. And Elain is holding on.
Yeah. And maybe if she just wasn't so you came for me and not acknowledge Feyre too. I don't know. That's just a little a little something there. But after this, we only have 3 episodes left. And it's the 3 episodes left of the 3rd book of a series.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's more books to come, but this is a 3-book arc. And so all of this is going to start wrapping up.
And that's crazy to think about.
I know.
And now this week's featured podcast review.
This comes from Susie, titled You Won't Be Disappointed. These girls are amazing. I've been hooked on their podcast for months now. I've already listened all the way through and have started from the beginning again. Love the in-depth analysis of SJM's work. If you're a fan of ACOTAR, you'll love this podcast. This podcast reminds me so much of creative writing/reading analysis classes I took in college. You can tell they really know their stuff. And bonus points for being so funny and making me laugh out loud. 12 out of 10 podcast.
12 out of 10.
You think we're funny? Thank you.
I've never been called a 12.
I don't think I've been called a 10.
Yeah.
So then to be called a 12 out of 10.
It's like, oh, I'm over the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do appreciate the fact that people, I know we've said this before on other reviews, I appreciate that people think we're funny because sometimes it's so stupid.
Like, we think we're funny. Obviously, we laugh at each other's dumb stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But the fact that other people laugh along with us blows my mind.
Yeah, it makes doing the podcast worth it.
The listeners make it worth it 100%.
Yeah, you guys are why we do this.
Absolutely.
If you would like to have your review featured on the podcast, please leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be exploring chapters 66 through 69 of A Court of Wings and Ruin.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk.
Bye.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.